There's something your grandfather did before every single hunt that you don't. He walked outside, looked up at the sky, and made a decision. No weather app on his phone telling him when to go, no trail camera setting alerts about deer movement patterns. Just the moon, the wind on his weathered face, and 50 years of instinct. And somehow that old man knew exactly when the woods would come alive. He filled his freezer every single year, while modern hunters spend thousands on technology and come home with nothing but excuses and empty tags. That wasn't luck, and it wasn't coincidence either. It was a timing system passed down through generations of hunters. A system so effective that the industry had to bury it because they couldn't package it and sell it back to you. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what that system was, how modern university research proved that it actually works, and why no sporting goods store in America will ever teach you this. If you're new here, welcome to American Hunting Secrets, where we bring back the knowledge the industry wanted you to forget. Hit subscribe and that bell so you don't miss what comes next. Now let's start with what most hunters get completely wrong about timing. The average American hunter picks his hunting days based on one thing, his work schedule. He hunts Saturday because Saturday is his day off from the job. He sits in his tree stand from dawn to dark because someone on YouTube told him that patience is the key to killing big, mature bucks. And he completely ignores every single signal the natural world is practically screaming at him from every direction. Your grandfather never did that, and neither did any old-timer worth his salt. He didn't hunt when his boss gave him the day off. He hunted when the woods themselves gave him permission to enter. And the very first thing he checked every time was the moon. Now I already know exactly what you're thinking right now. The moon? Seriously? That sounds like superstition from the old days, and that is precisely what the hunting industry wants you to believe. Because here's the dirty truth they don't want you to figure out. If you think timing is just folklore, you'll buy a trail camera instead. You'll spend $300 on cellular plans and batteries trying to figure out when deer move through your property, when your grandfather figured out the exact same thing for free, just by walking outside his cabin and looking up at the night sky. So here's what actual university research says about moon and deer. Auburn University researchers Jeffrey Sullivan and Stephen Ditchkoff studied 38 GPS-collared adult bucks over 3 hunting seasons at Brosnan Forest in South Carolina, collecting data every 30 minutes. They found that on days closest to the full or new moon, bucks were significantly more likely to be active during moonrise and moonset. On days furthest from those lunar events, the pattern actually reversed. Bucks became more active when the moon was directly overhead or underfoot. This means the moon's position doesn't just randomly affect deer behavior. It creates predictable windows of activity that shift through the month. Your grandfather didn't need a research paper to understand this. He watched the moon for decades and saw the same patterns with his own eyes. Now here's where this gets really interesting for your next hunting season, because the moon is just one single piece of the complete timing puzzle. The full ancestral system your grandfather actually relied on every season had 5 more critical pieces that all work together in perfect harmony. I spent years collecting every single one of those forgotten techniques and put the complete system inside the hunter's vault, a guide with 12 ancestral secrets the industry buried to sell you gear. You'll find it waiting for you in the first link in the description. But don't go anywhere, because what I'm about to reveal to you next about barometric pressure is going to completely transform how you hunt. See, your grandfather didn't just look at the moon every single night. He also watched the weather with the intensity of a trained meteorologist. And the single biggest factor he always paid the closest attention to is something that most modern hunters have honestly never even heard of: barometric pressure. This is the invisible force that truly controls when deer get on their feet. Not the moon alone, not the temperature, and definitely not the wind by itself. The atmospheric pressure that pushes down on everything in the woods. Back in the 1980s, a dedicated group of hunters and researchers across Minnesota and Wisconsin launched a remarkable 7-year study they called the What Makes Whitetails Move Project. They tracked temperature, wind, lunar phase, cloud cover, humidity, precipitation, and barometric pressure across thousands of hunts. They even kept 2 captive whitetail herds as control groups for comparison. After 7 full years and thousands of carefully recorded field observations, they reached one single definitive conclusion that surprised even them. No other aspect of weather had as powerful an influence on deer movement as the barometric pressure reading on any given hunting day. Not the moon phase, not the air temperature, not the wind speed or direction. The barometric pressure beat every single other factor they measured. And here's the exact number your grandfather somehow knew by pure instinct. Whitetails move best when the barometric pressure falls between 29.90 and 30.30 inches of mercury. The real sweet spot sits at the higher end of that narrow range, right between 30.10 and 30.30 exactly. When the pressure holds steady in that golden zone, deer are on their feet. When it drops below 29.80, they bed down and wait it out. When it spikes too far above 30.40, movement slows down again. But here's the part that completely blew my mind when I first discovered it. The greatest surge in deer activity happened during rapid pressure changes. Drops of 4 to 5/10 of an inch triggered massive feeding frenzies. The researchers described those incredible moments in words I'll never forget. Deer appear as if God opened up the drain plug on a bathtub of whitetails, and suddenly they are absolutely everywhere you look in every direction. Then, just as abruptly and without any warning, they completely vanish again. It was never random, and it was never just a streak of bad luck in the field. It was the barometer rising and falling like a conductor leading an orchestra, telling every single deer in the forest when to move and when to stay hidden. Now your grandfather didn't own a fancy barometer hanging on his cabin wall, but he could feel it in his bones, literally, and science backs that up. A whitetail's inner ear works almost exactly like a barometer does. It detects changes in atmospheric pressure before a storm ever arrives. Ancient humans had the same ability, and many indigenous hunters relied on it. We lost it because we stopped paying attention to the natural world around us. But the deer never lost it, and they never will. Think about those days when you drove to your hunting property, and before you even got your boots on, you just knew it was going to be good. The air felt different, almost electric, crisp, and full of energy. That feeling wasn't in your head, it was the barometric pressure changing. Your body was picking up exactly what the deer were picking up. You just didn't know what to call it or how to use it to your advantage. Now let me give you the practical version of how this actually works in the field. The single best time to be sitting in your tree stand is right before a storm. When you check the forecast and see a cold front rolling in tomorrow morning, that afternoon and evening before the front arrives is pure gold for hunters. The barometric pressure drops rapidly as the system approaches your area, and deer sense that something big is coming, so they feed aggressively. They know instinctively that they might be bedded down for the next day or two. So they load up on calories while they still have the chance to do it safely. This is when your grandfather would grab his rifle without a moment of hesitation. He didn't need a weather app or a barometer reading on his phone. He could smell the rain coming on the wind and feel the pressure dropping. He knew the deer would be on their feet and feeding hard in the open. And here's the second golden window most modern hunters completely miss. The morning after the storm breaks is almost as good as the evening before. When the front passes through and the skies start clearing up behind it, the barometric pressure rises rapidly and the deer respond immediately. They've been bedded down during the storm-saving energy and burning calories. Now the pressure is climbing and their bodies tell them it's time to eat again. Illinois biologist Keith Thomas confirmed this exact pattern in his research. He found the greatest whitetail feeding activity occurred when the barometer was actively moving through that 29.8 to 30.3 range. Whether it was falling before the front or rising after the front passed through, the key was that the pressure was changing, not just sitting still and steady. Your grandfather knew both of these windows by heart without any instruments. He hunted the evening before the storm and the morning after it cleared up. Two simple rules that outperform every trail camera setup money can buy. Now let's talk about the third piece of your grandfather's timing system. Temperature, and specifically the magic number for whitetail movement. Every old timer I've ever talked to says the same exact thing about cold fronts. The first real cold snap of the season gets deer moving like nothing else can. And the science actually supports this one more than almost any other claim. When temperatures drop 20 degrees or more from the seasonal average, deer movement during daylight hours increases dramatically across the board. The combination is what made your grandfather so incredibly deadly in the woods. A falling barometer, a cold front approaching, and the temperature crashing hard. When all three of those things lined up at the same time, he never missed it. He'd tell your grandmother he wouldn't be home for dinner, and he meant it, because he knew that was the day a trophy buck would make a mistake. And he was right, more often than modern hunters would ever believe possible. Now I want to connect all of this together, so you can use it right now. Your grandfather's complete timing system worked on 3 simple checks. First, he looked at the moon to determine which week had the best potential. He knew that the days around the new moon and full moon created peak windows. Second, he watched the weather to narrow it down to the exact right day. A cold front approaching with a barometer falling was his green light signal. Third, he picked his specific hunting hours based on the time of day and season. Dawn and dusk during the early season, midday sits during the peak of the rut. 3 checks that cost absolutely nothing and beat every piece of modern gear. No cellular trail camera subscription, no Soliner app with a monthly fee, no weather prediction algorithm designed to sell you a premium membership. Just a man looking at the sky the same way his father taught him to look at it. The same way his grandfather taught his father before that. Knowledge passed from hand to hand for generations until the industry decided that knowledge was bad for business and gadgets were better for their profits. Well, not anymore, because now you know exactly what they tried to hide from you. If you want the complete system with all 12 ancestral hunting techniques, including the ones I couldn't fit into this video, the Hunter's Vault has it all. It's waiting for you right now in the first link in the description down below. And before you go, I want you to do something for me and for this community. Drop a comment telling me what your grandfather or father taught you about hunting. What was that one piece of old school wisdom that stuck with you all these years? Because the more we share these techniques, the harder it is for anyone to bury them. If this video opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. Someone in your hunting camp needs to hear this before next season starts. This is American Hunting Secrets, reminding you that the best gear you'll ever own is the knowledge that's been passed down through generations of real hunters. See you in the next one.